Ladies and gentlemen, as every year, we begin our ceremony with the presentation of the Knight of Freedom Award. I would like to invite the award recipient, President Mikheil Saakashvili, to join us for this part of the ceremony at the podium. I also invite Dr. Jacek Saryusz-Wolski to join President Saakashvili at the podium. Now I would like to call upon Zbigniew Pisarski, the president of the Casimir Pulaski Foundation, who will offer an introduction to the award.
Thank you, Katarzyna, my dear wife. Good morning, everybody. Your Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to everyone. It is my honor to represent the Casimir Pulaski Foundation, a leading Polish think tank specialized in foreign policy and security. Our patron, General Casimir Pulaski, was a person highly devoted to free but very inspiring values. These values are universal and should be accessible to people of all races and nationalities. Freedom, justice, and democracy. But almost like everything in our lives, these values should not be taken for granted. We the Poles know it from our history very well. To have and preserve these values, it takes effort and sacrifice. And particularly today, in this uncertain neighborhood, we know that we need the Knights of Freedom. Our international team of distinguished knights is so far composed of Professor Władysław Bartoszewski from Poland, Professor Norman Davies from the United Kingdom, Dr. Aleksander Milinkiewicz from Belarus, President Lech Wałęsa from Poland, President Valdas Adamkus from Lithuania, President Aleksander Kwaśniewski from Poland, Javier Solana from Spain, Bernard Kouchner from France, Senator Richard Lugar from the United States, and President Vajra Vike-Freiberga from Latvia. This team of 10 Knights of Freedom will be completed today by a new Georgian comrade. Today we would like to honor the man who modernized Georgia to the European standards, a person who by his many years of public service proved to be engaged promoter of the values held by General Pulaski. His personal commitment to accession of Georgia to European community and to NATO, it is among many examples of his dedication to principles of General Casimir Pulaski. By granting him with this award, we want to show respect and admiration to his achievements that could be a role model for other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, today we would like to say thank you to a great friend of Poland, President Mikheil Saakashvili. Now I would like to invite to take the floor our special guest, who will present the laudation in the honor of President Saakashvili. This man is one of the most respected Polish politicians, whose voice is attentively listened, even by his political opponents. When he was Minister of European Integration, he served our country in crucial moments by leading us to membership in the European Union. Through his commitment, he brought Poland closer to its deserved place on the map of Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, let me invite to the podium Minister Jacek Saryusz-Wolski.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege to be invited to speak in front of you by the Pulaski Foundation, European Academy of Diplomacy. I know the beginnings of. And to say a few words about our guest of honor, Mikheil Saakashvili. I wanted to start by saying how long I know him, and then I realized first that I don't remember. Second, that it seems that I know him since so long. It happened that yesterday, in this town, there was a lecture by President of Georgia. I've been getting invitations, and every time I opened those invitations, I said, oh, look, so it's Misha speaking in Polish Institute of International Affairs, and then on Saturday here. For me, Mikheil Saakashvili was, is, and will be President of Georgia. And it is not by mistake that I misread these invitations. His personification of something which, and I will use, Misha, this term, which was stolen from you, of Georgian dream. And today's stature of your country is thanks to what you did, not what your successors try to spoil. You're a great friend of Poland. I remember meeting you at the anniversary of Polish Solidarność in Gdańsk 10 years ago. And you know also that you have been always able to count on Polish support. In 2004, you made a miracle. After jumping over, I've seen the film, in your parliament and taking over the power from Shevardnadze and leading the Rose Revolution, you have been leading with the mandate of your people, of 96%, the Georgian drive towards freedom, prosperity, Europe, and Western values. You have founded the main vehicle of this fight, which was United Movement, UNM, United National Movement of Georgia. And it is paradox that you as a leader and that this movement behind you, whom you are still chair of, implemented the Georgian dream which then others tried to impose on Georgia as exactly the opposite of what should be. Friend in need is a friend indeed. And that's the relationship which joins Poland and Georgia. And I remember at all occasions I've been witnessing your speeches here in Poland, how emotionally, in the most positive sense of the word, you were about the achievements of Polish fight for freedom, Solidarność movement, and all our fight afterwards, and all what we Poles did to liberate ourselves and others in Europe. In 2008, I remember when Russian tanks crossed the border through the rocky tunnel. I was then chairing Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament. I was in August on holidays. For the first time in history of the European Parliament, we have convoked the extraordinary meeting of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Parliament in 10 days, bringing all the members from all corners of the world to say and to condemn that we are on the Georgian fight side for freedom and against the Russian war and Russian invasion. And then sometime after, you could have witnessed and felt the support of the free world and those in the European Union most concerned by your freedom and your fight. And it was a visit of 5 presidents of so-called new members of Central Eastern Europe of the European Union, led by Polish President Lech Kaczynski. And then I remember standing together with you on the stage of Euromaidan in Kiev in the wintertime of 2013-2014, which brought this great change which we witness and keep fingers crossed for together. Your reign in Georgia, contrary to the enemies and their false tongues, has left a great legacy. Governing from 2004 till 2013, you have changed the face of your country. Things have happened which nobody could expect to happen in this part of periphery of Europe and in the Caucasus, with all its complicated, complex, and very difficult history. And we Poles, we know what means difficult history when we say difficult history. Market reforms, champion of liberating economy, deregulating, on the top of the ranking worldwide of functioning market economy, leading a fight with corruption, which is a model for Europe and elsewhere, leading your way to NATO and EU. And as a representative of the European Parliament, I have to confess, we the West, we Europe, EU, we're not always fair and sufficiently responsive to your expectations and to what you have had right to expect from us. But those color revolutions which the Rose Revolution started were followed by others. And if today, or in fact 3 days ago, on Thursday, if we listen to this shameful speech of President Putin in Moscow, in Kremlin, and when he brings about the symbolic, colorful revolutions, which are a nightmare for you, for him, in a way and unintentionally, he's paying tribute to the Rose Revolutions and other revolutions which did follow and others which will follow. So congratulations on becoming Putin's nightmare. Because a night of freedom has to have an enemy. And the enemy is enemy of freedom. You have been championing modern and European Georgia. Your country also gave a good example for other countries which were less successful on that road, like Armenia and Azerbaijan. You've been very close in reform thinking with Ukraine. Those who do the great things like you did have powerful enemies. And tell me, well, who are your enemies, and then I'll tell you who you are. I think that history, and don't listen to that, but I said it publicly in Tbilisi. One day, there will be commemorative plaques and monuments to Saakashvili in Tbilisi. 2008 war was a terrible war for Georgia. It was, in spite of what was said afterwards, straightforward Russian invasion and war. And I think that now, when things happen, war of Russia against Ukraine, we, the West, understand better, or they, the West, we have this problem of double identity here in Poland, understand better who was right and who was wrong then, better than even few months and years ago. I think that not only fight a night of freedom, but also the fighter for freedom of thought and expression would be a correct title for you. Because when I witness and follow what you are doing after being exiled from your country by the regime who is fighting freedom, who is applying selective justice, who is departing from the European principles, standards, and values. And you keep going around, and you keep saying the truth, boldly. Few politicians of the West are able and courageous enough to say the things so truthfully and boldly as you do. So you also merit the prize of freedom of expression and thought. And if Georgia today, your country, and we keep it in mind when we voted in Foreign Affairs Committee and will vote in 1 week's time in in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, association agreement, ratification of association agreement of Georgia with the Union, we will vote and raise our hands in favor of your Georgia, not in favor of Ivanishvili's Georgia. Because it's thanks to what you did and in spite of what they did afterwards that we will approve this ratification in respect for the people of Georgia, because we are associating European Union with the peoples of Georgia, not with the present regime of Georgia. You have been the first to say no to something which I call Soviet Russia, because Russia of today never ceased to be Soviet. I said at the summit of the EPP, of the leaders of the European Union, where you are permanent guest and member of, that either we, the West, either Putin has changed or we, the West, have been getting him wrong all the way through. And the second is right. And the second is right. And you have been the man who said first no to Russia's invasion, imperialism, when you decided to confront Russian tanks coming into your country through the Rocky Tunnel, contrary to your countrymen and contrary to many politicians in the West and big part of the public opinion in the West. And I want to pay tribute to your courage, your farsightedness at that moment for what you did. Because in today's perspective of Ukraine being aggressed by Russia and Russia questioning the right of free sovereign nations like Ukrainian, Georgian, Moldovan to choose freely their freedom, to be, if they want so, in NATO and in EU, you started this fight. And I am certain that the history will render justice to this line of thinking and to the courage of this type of action which you did and has shown to us. I want to congratulate you on this reward. I want to say that it is more than just to reward you for your fight for freedom, and I want others in the top levels of politics to follow your example. Thank you, Misha.
And now, Mr. Zbigniew Pisarski will present President Mikheil Saakashvili with a sabre, which is a handmade copy of the 18th century weapon used by General Pulaski. The sabre is a symbol of the values the general has sacrificed his life for. Ladies and gentlemen, and now I would like to ask President Saakashvili, the Knight of Freedom Award recipient, to take the floor. Again, congratulations.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, all of you, and I'm incredibly, needless to say, I'm very humbled and honored. And to be in such a beautiful audience, to be among people who really are the future. No matter what Jacek was telling about, whatever our merits are, but I still think that most of it is in the past, although we still have some business to accomplish, but you are the future. And when I share my things with you, what would be my advice to you as future elites of the most interesting civilization the humanity had ever created? How shall we proceed? I think the main thing is that we should never reconcile with existing negative things, and we should never give up. Never giving up had to be motto of our lives, coming from where we were coming, because we were coming from a situation where we were not supposed to have any future. You know, we are in much better shape than were Georgian officers that came to Poland in 1920s, when they had basically lost their motherland, and they came to fight a desperate fight together with Polish people and Marshal Pilsudski, which culminated into, in the end, after decades, into Warsaw Uprising, and many of them are buried in Katyn together with other Poles, in a very desperate situation when Poland, once again, basically lost independence. And Georgia never could even dream at that moment about independence. So in comparison to them, we are in much better situation. When we raised the flag of Europe at my inauguration as president, because sometimes many people would tell you, things you are doing are crazy. I think there are people who generally are crazy, but there are people who do right things and they tell them they're crazy. And sometimes the truth is in between. And the reality is that when I first raised the European flag at my inauguration and said that this is the future of Georgia, most of the European Union decision makers thought we were crazy. We sang the Ode to Freedom, but there were also other people in Europe who welcomed us, and Jacek was the first man to introduce me to the European Parliament. He came to pick me up at the hotel in Strasbourg, drove me all the way to the podium of the European Parliament, and that was my big first speech to the wider European stage. I never remembered, I forget that, but the things we were saying, that we want to be part of this great union, we want to be part of these great projects, lots of people have been looking at very skeptically. Then there was war of 2008, all-out invasion. And we show also different sides of Europe. We saw President Sarkozy who tried to mediate, but then he came up with what Russians suggested, basically as a new Munich Accord, where I had to sign with my own hand that I agreed to dismemberment of my country and to loss of its sovereignty. It was Article 6 of that agreement. He comes in and he tells you, you are finished. You know, Putin told me, he looked into my eyes, and he told me that he's going to hang you by different parts of your body. He definitely means it. And I'm not going to help you. I don't have soldiers to help you. See, Bush abandoned you. So you have to sign it, otherwise you'll be killed. And there were Westerners, there were my Western friends who were telling me, we still can secure Tbilisi airport. You and members of your government, which are under danger, should maybe be thinking about leaving the country. Or beforehand, maybe you can sign it and then they leave the country. And that are the moments when everybody takes their own decisions. And my decision was that I would never, ever give up. I always remembered that the Georgian government in 1921, when Russians came the same way, just from another direction, they gave up. They left the country thinking, oh, it's temporary and we'll come back. And I'm sure they suffered every day of their remaining long lives by the fact that they gave up at a very important moment. And I said, I'm not repeating this mistake. History should not be repeated. And we stood there till the end, together with hundreds of thousands of the people, together with President Kaczynski, who came, and other European leaders, together with Jacek, and many other friends in Europe that really stood by our side, and Georgian statehood survived. And did basically, many people say that it was beginning of Putin's adventures and advances. I think it was beginning of Putin's demise. Because 4 years later, Putin himself had to admit, and Medvedev had to repeat it many times, we hate Saakashvili, but the reforms they did in Georgia are something to be learned from. For the Russians, these were the people that 4 years ago were saying, I'm dead, Saakashvili is dead, and Georgia is finished. And they were saying 4 years later, well, we have to admit they've achieved something anyway. Even the enemy says this sometimes. And the reason why I'm saying that we are facing a very precarious situation now. Exactly 1 year ago, I was sitting in Warsaw, totally anonymous in some small hotel, trying to gather together with Jacek, MEPs, and members of Polish political class to go with me to Kiev, or to go with us to Kiev. I needed them because I had strong suspicion that Yanukovych wouldn't let me in on my own. And Jacek was very good in helping to mobilize all these people, and I met Malgorzata also at the airport at the moment when I came here then, I remember, and with some other friends. And actually we arrived in Kiev, and I was as I suspected, on their blacklist of the airport, but then I arrived and they surrounded me, and this big man, Jacek, covered me with his body so that they wouldn't notice me through the airport lines, and so they sneaked me in. And that was basically very bad, because Boris Tarasyuk was on the center of all these events there. And he remembers, and this was a first big delegation of European parliamentarians. Of course, on the way out, they all had to do the same way, because, again, they wouldn't let me out, that we were stuck for almost an hour at small Kiev airport, at Giuliani. But actually, the fact that, and then, of course, we were proclaimed persona non grata, but it's already started to move. And people of Ukraine saw that they had other friends. And then I called my friend John McCain, who still was not on blacklist. And he came 3 weeks later, and he was on his way to some warm south country. I told him, please, go to Ukraine. It's much more important now. It's very cold there, but it's more important. He told me it was best trip in his life, because he saw almost 1 million Ukrainians standing there, and he took the photo with and he tweeted it with his iPhone. So the reasons I'm telling this, we were there 1 year ago in this cold, very nice, but still very nice Warsaw, and basically there was almost no hope. I knew most of the people, also in the West, thought that there was no future for Ukraine, that it was hopeless, Maidan was doomed, and nothing was going to happen. We thought otherwise. And we went there, and of course Ukrainians thought otherwise, and they made it, and they will make it. Now here we have a big challenge. Vladimir Putin is thinking about new war in Ukraine, but he's also thinking about new war in my part of the world. He's building a road through Dagestan to Georgia day and night, and it's a military invasion road, and it's a military invasion road directed at Tbilisi, which he couldn't take in 2008, even with 100,000 people army and doing bombing us with 200 planes. He is building this road because it's also a road to invasion to other parts in our region, also to, I think, first target is Azerbaijan potentially, from his standpoint. And he's also talking about other interests directed at Kazakhstan, at Belarus, at Baltic countries. So if you look at his speeches, they are copycats of Hitler's declarations before the Second World War. Well, we are facing this dim reality. But I think this is doomed, because this is a part of much bigger struggle. And the bigger struggle is struggle between modernizing, positive, open-minded forces based on good, and democracy is part of good, freedom of debate and expression is part of good. And the other side, people who think that this is all decadent, and what they incarnate is strongman's power, deceit, lying all the time, this Byzantine, Mongol kind of old-style, old-fashioned thing where words don't mean anything, where you are there just to deceive, to cheat, to intimidate, and to just carry your things through, no matter what is the truth and what are the lies. And these are these two realities. And there are the moments when you think that the forces of evil are prevailing. And there are the moments when you almost think that it's time to give up. Well, but one lesson we learned for all my life, and I think this should be something that I might be sharing with you, we should never do that, because what seems to be absolutely real today, when you are facing somebody who is 100, 200 times more, seems to be more impressive, more scary, more powerful, and almost doomed to win, you always say there is always something that will make them very vulnerable and weak. And that's something is called that you are right, truth is on your side, you are more noble, you are more just, maybe you are less numerous, but you certainly are on the right side of history, and you are on the right side of the future. And that's what's going to happen. I think we will see that the forces of anti-modernization will fail. There is no way anti-modernization can defeat modernization in today's world because of many tendencies. I think there are also hopeful signs, And I think this very country, Poland, incarnates, which I think is one of the best nations in the world. I always say that, because sometimes Poles are very... I would say if I had not been Georgian, it is the best nation in the world. But with all the people present in these audiences. But I think even you would say, you would agree to that, because what this country stands for as a symbol is freedom and coming back from the cold, coming back from the homelessness, coming back from being doomed, coming back from sliced up all the time and still making it and coming back. It's a biggest comeback story of European and world history, Polish state and Polish success. And we are all inspired by these great comebacks. Because I remember very well, and I'll finish on that, Catherine the Great wrote a letter to the German emperor saying should never allow Poland to make reforms because we cannot take it back then. That's Putin's motto today. For him, not the me waving rose was a problem. The reforms we did in Georgia was a problem. Because somehow it sneaked out of his attention. He thought that all of us were corrupt, all of us were decadent, all of us were easy to manipulate, all of us were crazy, and could be stopped from doing anything positive and real in life. We're not good for anything. And he failed on the main premise that every human being is weak and evil by definition. That's his main premise. He failed on it, and that's what Georgia stood for. That's why in Ukraine, where I had been offered one of the highest positions in their government, I had to decline it for my own reasons, but I will be part of their reform story anyway in many different forms. Georgia reforms are kind of looked at with hope because that proves that even small, desperately hopeless Georgia could make it big and in many ways more developed but potentially wealthier and stronger Ukraine can make it as well for sure and even much better than us. So there is this thing, there is this hope, that's what Georgia and even with Georgia being temporarily taken over by the people whom you mentioned, I don't lose hope because I know exactly that this is all the forces of evil, every comeback of evil is very temporary. It will be shorter and shorter and shorter. And in the end, they will leave us for a long time. So again, I'm staying with you. I'm incredibly honored to take this sword. I know that swords are good when they are applied in real fight. This sword is not going to hang on the wall. We have quite some enemy to combat, and these enemies, as you rightly said, are the knights of darkness, and every knight of freedom, and all of you are potential, all of you are knights of freedom. These people, this man there is a very accomplished knight of freedom. This amazing couple is amazingly important friends of ours. In that fight of freedom, and there are many of us like this, we will keep sword out, and we will always keep it in battle until this battle brings us ultimately to our final victory. Victory is near, there is no alternative to it, and we will never give up until the last minute when we see that this victory comes to our doorsteps and we finally rejoice it. Thank you.